My name is Alison Reichle, and for 12 years before I retired, I had the privilege to teach a special women's studies class to pregnant and parenting teenagers. I'll be reading from my book, Strange Knowledge, Stories from Desert Flower, which reveals the experiences of the first 41 girls who took this rather outrageous class. Half of the words in the book are theirs. Before I begin, I want to clarify 3 terms. WAP, which you will hear, W-A-P, it's an abbreviation for the Women Empower class that the students came up with. And they called themselves the Wappers, so you'll hear that too. And the last thing I want you to know about is you'll hear the phrase, the far end. My room was a former service kitchen, and it was long and narrow with 5 doors in it and a giant sink. So the only way we could arrange the tables was in a sort of a long, narrow strip down the center. So there was always a far end out there. Before I invented the WAP class, I was working with the pregnant and parenting teenagers, and I began to notice something that developed further the better I got to know the kids. Something I came to call strange knowledge seemed to be quite typical for many girls, and it nagged at me. Girls wrote about dependence in one form or another. They wrote about the males in their lives, or the males who had left them, or the feelings they had about having a baby. In reality, they rarely wrote about themselves. Uncoached, their outpourings were almost always focused on someone else. Strange knowledge had to do with the assertions many of my students made when I asked them to write about their futures, their dreams, their goals. Quite a few would consistently produce lines such as, "I know we will love each other once he gets out because our love is true. I know our love will last forever because he has always been there for me. Although we have our ups and downs, I know in my heart we will work it all out because I love him and I know he loves me no matter how he acts. I know someday he will come back to me and we will love each other forever." Even when these sentiments were well written, as they sometimes were, I was disturbed with so many of the girls writing accounts that were self-silencing, docile portraits in which they waited for others to act. They wrote with great certainty about futures that seemed not to include them as persons. In general, they were the ones who avoided academic risks, who answered none of the above on multiple choice tests, who wrote "I have no idea" on discussion exercises, who disliked math and science, and were clearly willing to pin their emotional and financial hopes on a man. The girls were, by and large, talking about men, not boys. On a man with whom they were having unprotected sex. Yet these girls knew about AIDS, and from their writings it was not hard to see that many of them also knew their sex partners were not monogamous. Strange things happened in our campus nurseries too. They were sometimes places where the knots in young lives unravel, like the ritual of examining wallet or phone photos, photos of boyfriends, babies, dress-up events. One late morning, 2 girls discovered they were carrying pictures of the same guy. In the resulting melee, a 3rd girl picked up one of the photos. Guess what? Yep. Same smile, same guy. Her guy. Everyone was accused of being a bitch, puta, slut, hoe, and blows threatened before our staff swept the combatants into different offices. But vehement accusations continued until Letha, a genius at intervention, pointed out that the children, the 3 babies, were related, brothers and sisters. Still, each young mother saw the other two as the ones that were responsible for the perfidy and violation. It was a knee-jerk reaction that had nothing to do with logic and everything to do with societal roles. Later, one of my guest teachers would exclaim in frustration with the tendency of some girls to defend their boyfriends no matter what, "That boy is not your friend." Letha would always have apoplexy in the office the mornings roses were delivered for girls who had shown up earlier covered in bruises. At lunch, recollecting the boyfriend photo debacle, one staff member commented about new uses for duct tape. Someone else mentioned posting mugshots of all known sperm donors in the lobby. A teacher friend, having listened to an account of the wallet and phone photo war, proposed a national penis tax, refundable with interest if the operator of the penis avoided stimulating any ova. This kind of humor is, of course, in very bad taste, a relative of the kind of language developed in burn units by doctors and nurses, a way of distracting oneself from the powerlessness many of us in the helping professions feel when faced with daily exposure to destruction. All of us were concerned about the safety of our students, harder and harder to maintain in this era of almost casual familiarity with death and guns. Jan, the nurse, informed us at lunch one day that there were guns on campus. "Where?" we asked. "In the diaper bag," she said, taking another bite of her sandwich. But such incidents as the boyfriend photo war continue to bother me. How was it that the girls so instantly attacked each other as sluts? Where was the outrage at the boy involved? Girls seemed genuinely surprised to discover infidelity, and yet who had been with whom and when, and who had a child by this boy or that, was a constant and open topic of campus conversation. Girls were validated by having a boyfriend, even a rotten boyfriend who treated them badly, was often in jail, and exposed them to AIDS. The strange knowledge of, "I know our love will always be true," was a kind of abracadabra incantation against the machismo that privileged the boys and so often left the girls victimized. How might education help girls such as these to think of themselves in more positive ways, to put their best interests first? They needed more than just mental stimulation and support. They needed a sense of choice about their lives and the energy that comes from possessing choice. My research was telling me that girls learned how to be incompetent in a system that consistently denied them support. What would happen if they studied the socialization process that creates second-class citizens? What would happen if they had a chance to look critically at their own educations and lives in a safe space in which to analyze what was happening to them? What would happen if they had a chance to learn something else? After I put the curriculum for the Women in Power class together, I decided to begin the year drawing self-portraits, and that's a little bit about what this passage was about, self-portraits and body image. On the third day, we shared the self-portraits taped up on the walls, including mine, and spent a few minutes inspecting the drawings and politely commenting before the discussion disintegrated into artistic criticism, giggling, and the release of tensions. I accepted compliments about my portrait, which wasn't bad, and then I asked what impressions we had of the drawings as a group. Silence. But sure enough, Pearlberry, bless her, was willing to lead. "I guess I'll start since everyone's being so shy," she said. "They all drew them too fat, except that one girl." "Caradwin," I said. Yeah, whatever. You know, I am sure we all have run into this situation. Well, maybe not all, but most of us, how the body images we have aren't ever what we want. We want what we can't have or don't have or something. Like this is a marketing thing, don't you think? I mean, who gets the money here from all this? You know what I'm saying? Now, as for me, I have never been what you call the average-figured girl, and I'm not getting any smaller, no way. Much laughter and patting of bellies. But I like to look nice for me, she said. You know what I mean? But I am not Barbie. Is anyone? I asked, eager to get a word in. More silence, a few grumbled negatives, then a flood. Lots of us were not Barbie. Nah, no one, girl, said Rosie Talavera, looking at Pearlberry. Pearlberry, said Pearlberry. Oh yeah, right. Well, Barbie's just a bunch of that Valley Girl white thing. Rosie's voice dropped into a breathy California dialect. Like, wow, dude, when are we going surfing so I can show you my totally new bikini and trip you to the max? Shit, she stage whispered, fluttering her eyelashes over half-closed eyes. Much more laughter. I never had a Barbie, tried Terry. My mom's in the service and we didn't believe in that crap. Besides, Tim didn't want me for my body. He's more of a spiritual. Who had those Barbies? Interrupted Rosie, off on another inquiry. Hands shot up. Comments drowned out my attempted plea for letting speakers complete their sentences. Come on, tell the truth now, encouraged Pearlberry, standing to count. More hands. Almost everyone had a hand up. A few say they didn't have Barbies, but they played with them, even wanted them. Confessional fever was rising. More hands went up, waving. Who had a black Barbie? Yelled Sandra, wanting to get in on the act. I did, said Christina. She was cool. I loved her. Remember those little dresses that... Soon as they went on sale, Mom got me one, said Tanisha. Yeah, I had one like that too. I had two. We had whole families of them. What? You had families of dresses? No. Barbies, miss. We had families of Barbies. Call me Allison, not miss. I'm too old to be a miss, I said. Sorry, miss, Allison. We had families of them. We did too. My sisters, mis primos. What's the black Barbie like? I asked. Exactly like the white Barbie, said Alicia rather primly from the back end of the room. How exactly? I asked her. Well, exactly. Except the plastic is brown and... Yeah, girl, just one dyed chocolate with the same hair but black. But it's the same hair, not real hair, you know, like it's not black hair. It's the yellow hair, only in black, ventured Jewel from the back in her sharp voice. Is there a Mexican Barbie, I wanted to know? Oh, yes, but it's the same thing too, said Connie Huerta. It's brown, you know, but that's about it. Yeah, miss, said Yoli, scooting forward in her chair to see better. You know, we go for other images more in our culture, like the Virgen, quipped Connie. Laughs. Virgins, yeah, right, said Rosie, rolling her eyes again. More laughs. Puta, said someone. Ha, ha. We can come back to putas later. Well, I'm not going to touch that one, I said. Don't even go there, miss, whispered Sandra next to me, offering private advice in a motherly tone. I thanked her. Okay, what about Pocahontas, I asked, about that summer's big Disney splash. Just old Barbie in deerskin, Pearlberry said with a nod of her head. Yep, wearing pearls and a push-up bra, I added. We were rolling now. And with a canoe, said Amethyst, making paddling motions. Most of the far end began synchronized paddling motions. Jewel even joined in. Eventually we got to the Barbie data. I did Barbie math on the whiteboard, working out her proportions so everyone could see. I invited Barbie into the room and drew her so we could actually test out the math of Barbie's amazingly defective anatomy. The door wasn't tall enough and her head ended up on the bricks above the frame. We commented on her disabilities, noting that Barbie, poor thing, could not possibly wear Nikes. Later, we'd get to the politics of tennis shoes. What else do you not like about your portraits or your bodies? Conversation started again. Josette disliked her strong, work-worn hands, and although she was proud of what they could do, they looked like boy hands, she said, holding them out in front of her. Yoli liked her body, but admitted sometimes being so short wasn't fun. She was bored with short jokes. Jewel had skinny legs and had been called chicken leg and toothpick. Tonisha's brother called her fat ass from the time she began to develop. Men talked to Chris's chest, which mildly annoyed her. After all, she says, I am big, and that's what they like, but I have a brain too. We would come back to the way we felt about our bodies over and over again during the year, sometimes with anger, sometimes with pride, sometimes with confusion. Many of the girls felt much better about themselves after they'd gone through delivery, and because they could wear the clothes they liked once more. I think they also felt brave. This next excerpt is from a section I'm just referring to as sex education. The United States likes to characterize itself as a child-positive culture, but I believe this is far from accurate. While the majority of our youth will have had sexual intercourse by the time they are seniors in high school, teen sexuality is still seen as a moral or perhaps political issue. A stimulating article by Angela Bonavoglio, Making Love in the Dark, highlights the problem. Quote, the United States is in the midst of an STD epidemic of undreamt of proportions, and kids are at greatest risk. It is horrifying to note that some easily treatable diseases such as gonorrhea and chlamydia are proliferating among adolescent girls, and many can contract STDs unknowingly when they are young but not develop complications, some of which can be fatal, until years later. And we must add the threat of HIV to our worry list. AIDS is a constant concern at Desert Flower and certainly other schools. Yet education about STDs is radically inadequate, even in our highly sexualized society. Most school programs are not aggressive enough to cover the topic adequately, and doctors do not routinely screen for these diseases, perhaps because many managed care plans don't cover the tests. But how can this possibly be cost-effective? In the case of many Latinas, prospects are not good. They drop out of school more than any other group, and they are getting sick at greater rates. When I asked a few of my friends to describe a dropout, most of them talked about a brown-skinned male. Others characterized their dropout as a non-white female who got pregnant. But at Desert Flower, we see just as many girls who dropped out, got pregnant, and then returned to school. Statistics are difficult to interpret. Perhaps the worst news of all, according to studies such as those Angela Bonavoglio cites in her article, is that the epidemic of silence about sex seems to be a shamefully American blunder. She says, the U.S. has an adolescent gonorrhea rate 25 times the rate of Germany. An adolescent chlamydia rate 20 times the rate in France, and an adolescent syphilis rate 6 times the rate in the Netherlands. What's going on here? The difference is the gap between denial and communication. In European countries, mass media campaigns make safe sex cool, and teen health is a public health issue based on scientific research rather than moral platitudes. Schools are encouraged to educate kids about sexuality. Other research shows that where condoms are readily available, teens actually delay having intercourse. The European approach to teen sex as a developmental issue has led kids to having their first intercourse a year or two later than their counterparts in the United States. We need a candid, unbiased approach to teen sexuality in this country rather than the ostrich method we are currently using while our kids become ill in increasing numbers. 1 out of 4 of them will get an STD, and most will get it when they're young. We need to talk about sexuality in public and in bed, says Bonavoglia. He won't use a condom because he says he can't feel anything, the girls told me. He said he'd pull out in time. He said the rubber broke, and you know, miss, he comes so hard it would go through a boot. Strange knowledge. Am I advocating more forthright education about human sexuality? Yes. Since kids are most certainly having sex, at the very least it could be informed sex, and one would hope tender and mutually satisfying. Gratifying physical intimacy, however, seems rare among my girls. I'd rather have a massage, sighed Kitty. Not only are students unenlightened about the mechanics, but worse, many lack even a vague notion of how intimate relationships or entanglements can impact their lives. They need to know how to care for themselves, care in the deepest sense. I want not only my kids, but all our kids to have warm, fulfilling personal connections that enhance their lives. And quality lives are based on self-knowledge rather than ignorance. Ignorance does not foster pride. Our culture, particularly the multi-million-dollar profit-making media culture aimed at teens and sub-teens, is not focused on their welfare, on quality personal relationships. It is the ugly noise of money being made. If we are serious about the health of our youth, we need to get serious about what they need to be happy. They need accurate information about their bodies, hearts, and minds, and the skills to use that information for their own personal power. This is the core of the Wappers message. At the end of the first year, I asked the students to write a course description for the students enrolling the following year, and I'd like to read you just a couple. This is Caradwin's. What is self-esteem? How would you prove to someone that you have confidence in yourself? What is power? This is a class that not only will help you answer these questions, but it can also completely change what the questions mean to you. In the class, we study and, more importantly, discuss many issues that affect women today. We learn about women's bodies, our images of them, and what effects our images have on the public. We learn about women's accomplishments and how we can create our own. We also learn about women's downfalls, everything from discrimination in schools and work to rape and female circumcision. We even discuss legal matters, women's rights according to the Constitution, court cases, and the power of the vote. Through all this, something amazing happens. In this class, we call it empowerment. But if you look up empowerment in our dictionary, it isn't there yet. But trust me, by the end of the class, you will have a clear definition. So keep your ears, minds, and eyes open, and you will encounter something wonderful. And I'd like to read Amethyst's. Dear new student, my name is Amethyst Stone, and I graduated from Desert Flower during the year 1997. One of my general course classes was the WAP class. When I first registered for this class, I thought it was a dud, and I wasn't too interested in a women in power class. I just thought I knew everything. I'm sure you're probably thinking the same thing. I thought, but this class is really an ear opener and an eye catcher. The WAP class really helps to enlighten and liberate you from the myths and the misinformation our culture brings to young adults about sex, women's rights, the law, stereotyping, love, money, and power. It will open many doors you yourself have never walked through. It is a means of communication for the real world. Be prepared to listen to the speakers who will take your heart away. Stories that will put tears in your eyes and topics no one else will discuss that you didn't even know were true. Be prepared to express your ideas, thoughts, and opinions because it is okay. You may even feel better opening up. So keep your eyes open and your ears perked. P.S. Be in class every day and participate, and you should have no problem passing. And then Beth's. The Women in Power class is not your usual kind of class. Most schools do not have classes like this one Dr. Reichle has decided to teach. That is too bad, because young women all over the world should be able to have this kind of class. You will be expected to do articles, write memos, write essays, and most important, to participate by being in the many discussions of topics that concern women. If you are shy, you don't have to talk, but you must listen and respect the opinions of each person. You will learn about women in history that are not in your history or government books. You will see videos and guest speakers. A lot of time, WAP talks about subjects as rape, violence, and discrimination. But it is not upsetting because these things happen to women, and it is a relief to know what to do about them. Sometimes people talk in ways you would not expect, or maybe even approve of, but each person has a say. All of the women we studied and the guest speakers were women of power, for us to learn from and to help us with our lives. Without this class, we would be ignorant about all of these things. If it's hard, just be patient. This class is really about courage, and that's what I admire about it the most. Reading over the ragged and eloquent pieces my students had produced, I remembered those rough and forceful days when I had connected what was going on in the general society with my own fate. Aha! Yes! So this is what I'm dealing with. Remembering that, I forgave the fervid punctuation marks my students tended to use with abandon. I had felt like exclamations too. The Wappers were brand new feminists. They knew they were writing to me because this set of papers would not be shared in class. The papers were, after all, their prerogative, their exercise in mastery, their final demonstration of their skills. They had learned to complain, and more. They had learned to speak with authority. Thank you. See you around the Pueblo.